Hello, BookTube. So, I'd like to give my thoughts about a book that I recently completed. Um, it's a book that I read on my Kindle or my Kobo, sorry. And it's called What to Eat by Marion Nestle. And if you know that last name, Nestle, you'll find it a bit ironic that this is a book about nutrition. And it's not just any book on nutrition. Um, But I guess before I go into this book, deep dive into this book, I'd like to give a little bit of a background about how getting an e-reader has changed my reading a bit. So, what I usually focus on physical books, and how I've always read is I have one book at it going at a time, and I don't ever read more than one book. I just read one book, read it to completion, and then go on to the next one. But ever since I got a Kindle or a Kobo, and then I keep mixing that up, I don't have a Kindle, I just have a Kobo. And but ever since I got this Kobo, I've started reading two books at a time. And just the way I am, and because I'm a creature of habit, I always neglect the book that I'm reading on the Kobo, and it ends up taking a lot longer to read it than what a normal read through would be if I just focused purely on the book on the Kobo. So this book took me just over 2 months, approximately, maybe a month and a half, and that has nothing to say about the quality of the book because this book is a fantastic book. So this book, like I said, this book is about nutrition, but it's not just about any nutrition. She's not The author here is Marion Nestle. She is a professional scholar in nutrition, so that's her expertise. But it's not just nutrition in general. Her area of expertise has to do with the politics of food and how that works and that whole entire environment of food politics. And this book, it's important to put this book into context before I talk about this book itself. So before she wrote this book, which is How to Eat, and it's a practical guide to um, the grocery store and what you will all see at the grocery store when you're shopping for food. But before she wrote this book, she wrote a book, a scholarly book that was published by a university press called Food Politics, which is exactly what the title suggests. It's basically an expose on food politics, on the politics surrounding food, and there is a lot of politics surrounding food. And um, that book, she writes in her introduction that her readers of that book, while they appreciated that book that exposes the food and the politics behind food and the food industry, she says that she got a lot of requests about how to implement that in their practical shopping, in their practical lives when it comes to deciding what to eat and what foods to buy. And so she wrote this book as a response to that. So this book is exactly this book incorporates the food politics, but applies it in a day-to-day your average grocery store shopping situation, and that's what I really enjoyed about this book. So she presents this book in each chapter. She has like different sections, and then has sub chapters in there. And what she does is she takes you as the reader by the hand, basically, and leads you through the grocery store. And this is what you'll see. These are the different options, and she zeroes in on these um, different sections, whether it's the produce, dairy, meats, snack foods, the cereals, uh, even the junk food aisle, and she zeroes in and goes into very interesting background about the politics of these different aisles, and how the produce, or the wheat or cereal companies and whatnot, how they do their best to get you to buy their products. And that's one of the major themes of this book. And I assume I have not read her food politics, and I don't think you need to appreciate this book, because she gives you ample amount of background, um, and which is one of the great things about this book. But she goes into very good detail surrounding the politics of each of these different sections, and the main theme of all of these different produce sections in the grocery store is that the business model is to get you to buy their products and to buy as much of it as possible. And and of course, you can see some obvious conflicts based on the average person's goal. The average person normally wants good, healthy food that they can buy for themselves or for their children. And then, but that's not usually the case. And as most people are aware, the Western world and America and Canada, and this book is situated mostly the food politics surrounding America. But me as a Canadian, I still found it absolutely fascinating to see the business tactics in America, and I'm sure that's not much different for me in Canada. But she situates that into an overall context of these businesses are not on your side. They're not wanting you to be healthy. They want, and it's not like nefarious in necessarily. It's them just following a business model to get as much as much money as they can for the least amount of um, uh, I don't know, input from their side, and which is why certain products they spend millions and millions and millions, even at some point billions, into advertising certain products, because these products are really cheap to make and they're extremely popular. Um, and so when you buy them, they have the ratio between what it costs to make and to package the product versus what it costs you to buy it is, and so their profit is drastically increased. Um, is foods like cereals and soft drinks, because soft drinks take almost nothing to make, uh, and yet the prices on them don't reflect that. And it's really fascinating, this book, to see those food politics, and just to see how much the food industry influences what you buy and what you think is healthy for you. There's some really good examples in here too, like for example, the dairy industry and the meat industry. Both industries are trying to get you to think that you need meat and you need dairy as essential parts of your diet, when that's actually not the case. The reason why you think that is because the meat and dairy lobbyists in politics have a lot of influence on government industries that recommend health, or what's healthy for you. And so they recommend that you need this so and so amount of dairy each day as a part of a healthy diet, or you need a certain amount of meat, how many so and so many servings of meat each day as part of a healthy diet, when that's not the case at all. What you need, of course, eating dairy or consuming dairy and meat has a lot of health benefits for you, but you can get those same health benefits from eating different foods, and it's a lot is based on how much of those other foods you are willing to eat. And so you can be perfectly healthy and not ever eat any dairy um, or any meat, because you can get those nutrients just as well from other places if you know where to look. And I found it fascinating just how how um, how interesting, or just even the setup of a grocery store. She goes through how the very setup of a grocery store is designed to make you buy as much as you to the point of completely unnecessary spending, uh, based on what you think is what well, one is an impulse buy, and two is what you think is good for you. Uh, So, one of the things I did not know when I went into this book is that companies actually pay grocery stores for shelf space. So, um, the most so the racks or the shelves that are eye level, and the those spaces that are in the middle of the aisles and at the end of aisles are usually the most prominent positions in a grocery store because they get the most looks, and they're the most easiest to access and to pay attention to. And so those have premiums. So it's not like you're getting the healthiest foods being thrown in your face. You're getting whatever the companies are willing to pay um, to be put in the most obvious positions. And it's also why usually in most grocery stores, the foods that you go into a grocery store having as on your list, whether it's milk or something, uh, it's why they're positioned near the back or on the sides of the grocery store, so that you have to walk by all these different aisles just to get to what you need. And that also leads into something she touches at the very end or near the end of the book. It's about the ethics of advertising to children, because uh, no matter what companies want you to think, um, advertisers really dig down into advertising to children. And what she looks at it very quite cynically. She says that advertisers are basically trying to get you or get your children against you, put your children against you, because they know the influence that a child has on their parent, especially when you're in a grocery store. You're in a public place and your child really wants this cereal with a cartoon on it that was advertised for children, and it's a sugary cereal that's not good for them, and you tell them no, and they throw a tantrum. What are you likely to do? Are you gonna deal with, what's the best, or what advertisers know how you'll react in that situation most of the time. You don't want to deal with that in the public, so you'll just give in and buy the cereal because it'll lead to less conflict. And that won't be for everyone, but it's for most people that's the case. And advertisers exploit that to a strong degree, and it's really quite interesting. And she also goes into your typical nutrition, the amount of calories that stuff has. Like when you go to the grocery store, you have such an enormous amount of variety. Uh, so she doesn't uh, tell you what to buy, which is what I really liked about this. But she really does uh, sort through what are some good things to look for, and how, and educates you the on how you can make your your own decisions in the best possible way. So like most foods have those nutritional daily, was it the serving size, and the daily percentage content wise about the nutritions in that food. What is it called? The nutritional value stamp or whatever, that table in the back. And she helps you navigate that list. And the ones that are most important to focus on are the calories, the serving size, for the calories, the fat content, and the carbs. And one of the most important things to look at when it comes to those lists is about the serving size, uh, because the serving size can be very deceptive. Um, Companies deliberately like to set those serving sizes as low as possible so that you think that you're getting something with only so and so much fat content or sugar content. When you think of but when you actually compare the serving size to what actual people eat, you'll have to double or even triple the entire nutritional value list to line up with what actual people will be eating for each serving. And that's fascinating to me. And that's what made this book really interesting. And she also gives you a really good guide on how to navigate those uh, ingredients lists, where when you buy stuff, it comes with a list of all the ingredients, and how the stuff at the very beginning is what is the most prominent ingredient in the list, and it goes down like that. And one of the baselines that she talks about is to just a rule of thumb is to buy stuff that has the smallest amount of ingredients on their list, because it means they have the least amount of added stuff, and it's most likely that they aren't trying to. You can point out and be aware of what's all in your food a lot more than ingredient lists that are huge with these really long and complex names that disguise what's actually being put in your food. And and that plays out in her discussion of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are include like starches and sugars, and she deep dives into what are carbs and why and how they affect our health, what they play in what we eat, and it's really fascinating to see just how much, when it comes to sugars specifically, and how they food companies will disguise how much sugar is in your food. I mean, you can always see the gram list on the nutritional value table, but when you go through the ingredients list, it'll say sugars, but then they'll say cornstarch, and it'll say I don't know, corn syrup or whatever. It'll just keep adding these other euphemisms really for sugar, when they are then at the end of the day they're all just the same thing. They're all sugar, different levels of sugar and different um, ways of extracting sugar. And at the end of the day, sugar is sugar, and sugar needs to be limited in your diet. But yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to say about this book. I really do recommend this book. It's absolutely fascinating. If you are one of those people who really want to eat healthy but you don't know how to eat healthy, I think this book will really, um, even if you think you know what you're doing when it comes to grocery shopping for choosing out what's healthy and what's not, I think this book will do a really good job at uh, helping inform you to see behind the curtain. She really does pull back the curtain to look behind the industry, and then draw you back into the grocery store. And how does this background that she gave about the politics of whatever food she's talking about, how does that play into what your decisions are, and um, how that plays out day to day in your day to day grocery shopping life. And I think the last thing that I want to say is that you'll be surprised on how much how much the food you eat is unregulated, and how much uh, and how it doesn't seem like that sounds like a big deal, but it's been like that for so long that uh, of course you'd want it to be more regulated, but you can choose options, which is why there's called the organic option, which is way more regulated. But whether it's like um, produce, or whether it's meats, um, even bottled water industry, which she talks about in a chapter in here, is really, really interesting about how the bottled water industry thrives after about trying to make youth question the or the drinkability of your own tap water, because when you buy bottled water, you're spending way, way, way more than what you do for tap water. And but she says that tap water itself is either comes from the same place as what your bottled water comes from, or it's even more, even better for you because your tap water is a lot more regulated than bottled water is. And that's just another example about what she talks about in here. But if anything that I've said here really does interest you, I strongly, strongly recommend this book. What to Eat by Marion Nestle. It is just absolutely fascinating. And if you care about what you eat, then I strongly suggest you pick up this book because you really will be informed about nutrition and food politics and how this applies to your own shopping at the grocery store. Thanks, BookTube.